We spent 447 euros on a 5-star beach resort in Vietnam for 5 nights. That's 89 euros a night for a 5-star resort on the beach. That's the thing about Southeast Asia. The numbers don't work the way you expect. We're Raresh and Andrea, we live in Rotterdam, the Netherlands, and we both work full-time. Last May, we took a 3-week vacation and went to Vietnam, Malaysia and Singapore back to back. We tracked every single expense. Every hotel, every flight, every grab ride, and even every bowl of bun cha. And we're gonna be fully transparent with you. Quick context, we're not trying to travel as cheaply as possible. We're not backpackers, we're not doing hostels or overnight buses. We're working professionals with limited amount of vacation days. And when we travel, we just stay where we want to stay and eat what we want to eat. What you're about to see are real costs when you're not optimizing for the lowest possible number, but you're not throwing money around either. Before we dive into the numbers, what's your biggest concern when it comes to the cost for a trip like this? Is it the flights? The hotels? Not knowing what things cost on the ground? Drop it in the comments, we'll try to answer the most common ones. Alright, so let's start with the most expensive category, flights. So flights first, because if you're watching from Europe, this may be your biggest expense of the trip. We flew Emirates, first from Amsterdam to Dubai, and then from Dubai to Hanoi. And on the way back, we flew from Singapore to Dubai and of course from Dubai to Amsterdam. So those were the biggest flight expenses. So 4 flights, 2 people, we spent 1,775 euros. And that's a fixed cost you have to pay before even setting foot in Southeast Asia. Do keep in mind that with the latest situations in the Middle East, it may be a bit more expensive to travel. However, things may change of course, and in the meantime there are some relatively cheaper alternatives. In a recent video of ours, we recommended going through China. There's actually quite a few Chinese airlines that are pretty affordable, one of which being Xiamen Air. They also have a lot of good connections from Europe through Xiamen and to your desired destination, so keep that in mind. We had a 7-hour layover in Dubai on the way there. Enough time to take the metro in the city, grab a meal and get back. Not planned, it just turned out to be a nice bonus. We also had a very nice meal too. Once you get to Southeast Asia, the cost structure completely changes. We also went to Hoi An, and to get there, we flew from Hanoi to Da Nang with Vietnam Airlines, which was surprisingly cheap and great value for money. The services there were amazing. For 2 people, one way, we spent 83 euros. It's also nice that you get checked-in luggage without having to pay extra. So European airliners, what are you doing? To continue our trip, we flew Da Nang to Kuala Lumpur, then Kuala Lumpur to Singapore, both on AirAsia, both including checked bags and meals. Both flights together, again, one way, costed us 230 euros. Another bargain if you ask me. Well, that's AirAsia for you. That's the move for a multi-country trip. Fly long haul into one hub, then try to use budget carriers to move around. Routing through Kuala Lumpur in particular opens up almost the entire region cheaply, something worth planning around. Alright, everything from here on is on the ground. Starting with Hanoi.
Before going into prices, a quick note. Hanoi definitely is one of our favorite cities in Asia. We've been to quite a few Asian cities, but whenever I talk with my husband, all the time Hanoi keeps coming back when we talk about where would we go again if we had the chance. Honestly, 6 nights in Hanoi felt just right. For accommodation, we booked the classic street hotel in the old quarter in Hanoi, which is exactly the place where you want to be, because that's where everything happens. So when you step out of your hotel, you're directly in the center. The hotel itself, it's a 3-star. It was very clean. It was a great location, and we had also breakfast included. The cost come down to 152 euros for both of us. As I said, there's nothing to complain about, and we enjoy how everything was super affordable. One thing worth mentioning is that we also had a 1 night booked on the Halong Bay cruise, to which we will get to in a moment. But we kept our hotel in Hanoi for that night as well, just to have it more convenient to store our luggage. And when we came back, we also stayed another night in Hanoi because the next day we had to fly early to Da Nang. Halong Bay, 1 night on the water with Peony cruises felt super nice for us. Even though we would have extended it to 2 nights because it felt a bit hectic to move your luggage just for 1 night, stay there, wake up early, and then leave at midday the next day. And they also had a lot of activities planned for us. Of course, not all of them mandatory, so you can go if you want. But anyway, we've been there for one night, and the round trip transferred from the old quarter to the cruise included as well. And we paid 250 euros for 2 persons, one night. Yeah, the transport was also very nice. It was not just a bus, it was a van. They had also massage chairs, which felt nice. We really felt that they really care about hospitality and for you as a guest to feel good and welcomed and relaxed. About Halong Bay cruise options, of course, there are a range of cruises that can go from cheaper than we chose to more expensive, so we chose something in the middle. We checked reviews, photos, some vlogs from other travelers like us, so that's how we chose Peony Cruises, and we can really recommend it. I forgot to mention that all meals were included in the price that we paid, although drinks and tips were not, so you pay extra for that, and we ended up paying 100 euros more for those. After the cruise, we headed back to Hanoi for another night. From Hanoi, we flew south to Da Nang, and we checked into Bliss Hoi An resort, and we stayed there for 5 nights. We ended up paying 447 euros for both of us, which works out to around 89 euros per night for a 5-star beachfront resort. A few things to know about this property: it's a new property. It hasn't been around for so long to charge a premium that more established hotels have. Another thing is that it's not located in Hoi An itself. It's about 30 minutes drive away from the city center, and I think an hour drive from Da Nang airport. If you are going there specifically to switch off, relax, do nothing, stay at the beach, it's amazing. That's why we went there. For us, this was the highlight accommodation of the whole trip. We really enjoyed how beautiful everything was, from the rooms, the landscaping. The people were super nice and accommodating, so we really recommend if you have a chance to check it out. And I also think 450 euros for 2 people for 5 nights, for what they offer, quite a steal for that price. It's a good value for money. Now let's talk about food, because I think in Vietnam, food is a whole conversation. The food in Vietnam is my favorite in Asia. And I think it's also because they don't overpower their food with powerful sauces or spices. So I can really enjoy the taste of food without overpowering it with something. That's just my opinion. I also enjoy vinegar and the sweet and sour sauces, so this might be a second reason why I really enjoy their cuisine. Apart from the taste, as this is of course a personal preference, we were impressed to find food at every corner. I think everyone knows by now that street food is a staple in Asia. We had a lot of banh mi as a snack or like a quick bite. This is their sandwich. It's actually a baguette filled with meat, veggies and herbs. The baguette is always fresh, which makes it always tasty, and you can find it on the street under 1 euro. Bún chả became my favorite dish of the entire trip. And I say that because it combines meat with a really sweet and savory broth, and it also has a hint of vinegar taste to it. The price is between 2 to 3 euros, so also very affordable. And then there was pho, a very classic Vietnamese dish. Most people eat it in the morning, so that's why most places run out before lunch. Prices run between 1 to 2 euros, at least from what we know when we went there last year. So again, you can see healthy, affordable meals, and not only that, but you can find them everywhere. You don't need to look too hard. For a sweet tooth, you can try the tapioca desserts with coconut water, fresh fruit usually, also condensed milk and different kind of pearls, jellies, and even creme brulee on top. For this kind of desserts, you usually pay under 1 euro per portion. These were just a few examples of Vietnamese meals that we tried and we found very affordable. One dish that's originally from Hanoi, it's Chaka La Vong. It's pan-fried fish with dill and spring onion, and they serve it to you when it's still sizzling. It's one of the pricier local dishes. You are looking at around 5 to 8 euros per portion at a proper restaurant. To try it out, we went to a place called Hanoi Food Culture. And then there's Bia Hanoi. You can get it anywhere at any local restaurant or at a street food corner. You sit on a plastic stool, usually surrounded by strangers, by good vibes, music, and the price, it's around 30 cents per glass. Of course, it's less about the beer itself, it's about the atmosphere and how many people you meet. In Hoi An, we mostly stayed at the resort, but we've properly visited a city one day. We stopped by a place where we had some banh mi's and some coconut water. So the other 4 days we kind of stayed at the resort. Of course, the resort has a very nice restaurant, so you don't really think about how much you are spending there. For food and drinks at the hotel for this time, we spent around 238 euros. That's definitely much more expensive than eating out in town. So we are trying to be honest about it. For the room and breakfast, we paid around 447 euros, but for the other meals and drinks, we had to pay extra. If you are budgeting for a resort stay in Vietnam, just remember that the resort price is just a starting point and not the total. Oh yeah, one evening in Hanoi we did a traditional massage and I still regret not having booked more sessions now that I'm back home working, having back pain every single day. What did we do? We booked a 2-hour massage session. We paid 20 euros per person. If I want to go now to a massage in Rotterdam, I would pay maybe 3 times that. And it's not even 2 hours. You got the point. To complement that evening, we also went to a rooftop bar and had some drinks there. I had a cocktail and my husband had some whiskey. And I think we paid around 10 euros. In Rotterdam, that price, you cannot even get a cocktail. Vietnam is still heavily cash-based, so for the food stalls outside, for some souvenirs, we had to pay cash. We estimate we spent around 300 euros for food and drinks in Vietnam, the two of us. That's cash and another 60 euros by card, so around 400 euros together for food and drinks in Vietnam, excluding the resort prices. Let's cover transport. For us, the most convenient and mostly used mode of transportation in Vietnam was Grab. I think we took around 19 rides between the two of us in Hanoi, in the transport between Hanoi and the airport, Da Nang, and the resort as well, which brings us to a total of around 60 euros, so it's around 3-ish euros per ride. What was cheaper than expected? The street food in Hanoi, for sure. We had affordable banh mi's, bún cha, pho, bia Hanoi, desserts, everything you can dream of, and also very healthy, to be honest. Another thing that was super cheap, of course, the Grab rides. They are super reliable as well, and you don't need to negotiate with taxis anymore. And what was pricier than expected? Of course, the prices at the resort in Bliss Hoi An. So that's our honest take of our trip in Vietnam. Before we dig into the total number of how much we spent in Vietnam, I think the daily number could be useful because it helps you plan better. Excluding flights, Vietnam costs us around 908 euros per person for 11 days, which brings us to around 82 euros per person per day. In this price, Halong Bay cruise and the resort are included. Of course, without the cruise, without the resort and other things that we bought as souvenirs, you can make this trip even cheaper. So now it brings us to our Vietnam total. 2 people, 11 days, it brought us to a total of 1,899 euros. That includes a Halong Bay overnight cruise, 5 nights at a beach resort, eating very well daily, and 19 Grab rides. Like I said before, Vietnam is the country where you can really spend very low, but you can also go very high. We chose something in the middle. What we are trying to say, maybe don't budget Vietnam day by day. Try to budget it by the experience that you want to have in Vietnam. And I really want to add a note here because we really appreciate how affordable Vietnam is. But we are also very mindful on the locals and how they live and their economical situation. So we understand that as a tourist, it might look different than for the locals. Saying this, it made us appreciate the people even more, and we found a very warm culture and very accommodating. We really appreciate Vietnamese people. Next stop, Kuala Lumpur.
Malaysia for us meant one city, Kuala Lumpur. We spent 5 days there in total with a day trip to Taman Negara, which we'll get into in a bit. And honestly, 5 days there just felt like enough time to explore the city in full. Let's start with accommodation. In Kuala Lumpur, we stayed at an Airbnb, an executive studio apartment in the KLCC area with a rooftop sky pool and a direct view of the Petronas Towers from the pool. There are a huge number of residential towers in the city center where owners rent out units, many of them with incredible amenities, rooftop pools, gym access, great views, at prices that are genuinely impossible to beat by hotels. It's one of the few cities where we'd actively recommend going for an Airbnb over hotels. So let's look at the total price. So 5 nights in total for this Airbnb brought us to 150 euros for the both of us. That is 30 euros a night with an amazing sky pool from which you get very nice views of the Petronas Towers and the overall skyline of the city. That figure alone tells you quite a lot of the value you get in Kuala Lumpur alone. Now let's talk about food. And Kuala Lumpur deserves quite a bit of attention here, because the variety here is unlike anything else we've ever seen. You've got Malay, Chinese, Indian, sometimes all in one block. Roti canai is a staple snack here in KL, a thin and flaky flatbread cooked on a griddle and served with dal or a rich curry sauce. Costs almost nothing, and it's one of those dishes that get better every time you have it. Don't forget about teh tarik, which is super creamy and sweet, and you typically have it on the side. Nasi lemak, that's coconut rice with sambal, a fried egg, anchovies, and peanuts. It is the national dish of Malaysia for a reason. Kaya toast is another great local experience. So it's basically a toast with kaya jam and a thick slab of butter. We actually bought a lot of kaya jam packs to eat at home. They were delicious. Oriental Kopi is a local chain where we kept coming back to. They had great curries as well. We had one with chicken, which was delicious. For example, 15 euros for the both of us for a proper meal with drinks included. Definitely a step up in value compared to Vietnam, but still very affordable. Jalan Alor at night is a street food strip. Satay, grilled seafood, noodles, and a bunch of really tasty snacks. That's the full picture of KL's street food scene when it's all happening at once. Between the two of us on a normal eating day in KL, we'd spent an average of 17 euros on food. It's very easy to eat well in the city without spending too much, so that's a nice bonus. One thing that kept appearing in our bank statements throughout the trip in Malaysia was 7-Eleven. We spent just under 40 euros at 7-Eleven. Sounds like a minor thing, but in Southeast Asia, convenience stores are just something else. And 40 euros worth of cold drinks as snacks across 5 days? I would say that's a pretty good value for money. Then there was the durian. A friend of ours who lives in KL took us to a proper durian spot, not a tourist setup. We tried a few varieties of durian, and she also introduced us to mangosteen, which was genuinely one of the best things we ate on the entire trip. The smell when you walk into a durian place is the first thing that hits you. It's confronting in a way that it's kind of difficult to describe to someone who hasn't been there and hasn't felt it. When it comes to the taste, I would say it's pretty rich, it's complex. Sometimes it gives notes of peach, but sometimes it also gives notes of red onion, which is kind of weird. Well, I did like it in the end, and I do recommend you trying it as well. The bill came to around 55 euros for fruit. Well, durian is called the king of fruits, and as it turns out, it is priced accordingly. So for 55 euros, we got to try 2 durians and a bunch of mangosteen, and I believe some coconuts as well. So I wouldn't say it was that expensive. Putting it all together, for Malaysia, for food and drinks, on card it came to around 270 euros for the both of us, across 5 days. And in our cash estimate, for food, souvenirs and other small purchases, that was around 200 euros added on top. So in total, for Malaysia, for food and drinks and other small things, we spent around 470 euros. For 5 days in the city with food that good, I would say that was pretty nice. And now, let's talk about the highlight in Malaysia for us. And I would say one of the highlights for the whole trip, and that was Taman Negara. So Taman Negara is one of the oldest rainforests on the planet, 130 million years old, which puts it well ahead of the Amazon. We booked a full day trip through Get Your Guide, And we had a very nice guide called Kopi Kopi. He was genuinely excellent. The kind of person who clearly loves what they do and makes the whole experience better because of it. So shout out to you Kopi Kopi if you're watching this. The day included a jungle trek through dense forest, a visit to a local village where we learned about how the indigenous community lives and hunts. We've spotted some really nice wildlife along the way, and we had a very nice boat journey along the river. The total for both of us was 280 euros. Included in the price was a meal on a traditional wooden boat. If you're going to KL, you should do a day trip to Taman Negara, or even better, go for multiple nights. Alright, so getting around. Let's cover transport. In KL, we use Grab for almost everything. I don't know how that happened, but we've taken 16 rides throughout the city across 5 days, and that brings us to a total just under 100 euros. KL is a very large city, it's very well spread out. It has a pretty good and decent metro system, which we've used, but because of the location of our Airbnb, it was just easier to take Grabs. And the prices are also relatively reasonable, even compared to Vietnam, where of course it was cheaper. But yeah, at around 6 euros per ride, yeah, you can't really beat that. So, what was cheaper than expected? Well, the Airbnb, for start, 150 euros for 5 nights, that is definitely a steal, especially having a very nice sky pool with views of the city. And of course, Grab rides. So at around 6 euros per ride, that is just very affordable. What was pricier than expected? Well, durian, of course. 55 euros for fruit wasn't something that we, budgeted for, but it is the king of fruits and it is priced like one. So before the total, let's dive into the daily number. So Malaysia cost us 527 euros per person, and that is around 105 euros per person per day. So that includes the Airbnb, the food, the durian, even the Taman Negara trip, as well as the Grab rides. Of course, if you wouldn't go for the Taman Negara trip, the cost would have been lower. That would have been around 387 euros per person or 77 euros per person per day. So let's look at the total. In Malaysia, we spent 1,209 euros for 2 people, 5 days, including everything as well as the flights. Malaysia felt like the sweet spot of the 3 countries. A proper modern city with world-class food, one of the oldest rainforests on earth a few hours away, and a price level that just doesn't punish you for enjoying yourself. The Airbnb value in KL is genuinely hard to beat, and Taman Negara was worth every cent of the 280 euros. If we would do this trip again, we would definitely spend more time in Malaysia and perhaps go to different cities like Penang.
Singapore was the last stop, and it was really different from the cities that we've seen before. It was less chaotic than Hanoi and more compact than KL and considerably more expensive than both. But we knew that going in. Let's see what we did and how much we spent. Let's start with accommodation, and this number hurts the most in Singapore. We stayed at Holiday Inn Express in Katong neighborhood. It's a 3-star hotel, very comfortable, modern, clean, and the most important, outside of the hotel was the closest metro station. So it's very important when you stay outside of the city to have transportation close by. 4 nights came to 455 euros for both of us. That's the most expensive hotel from the entire trip, if you look at it. Even though it doesn't seem expensive, just remember we stayed there only 4 nights. Now let's talk about food, because despite the hotel prices, Singapore has very good options for food if you know where to go. So as a subscriber mentioned before to us, there's a clear distinction by the hawker centers that are managed by the government and the private ones. And this distinction matters to locals. That said, whether it's a government operated one or a private one, they offer really affordable meals and you can find them mostly everywhere in Singapore. And the food at the I-12 Katong food court near our hotel was super good. We went back there multiple times. We had bento with fish, with chicken, with vegetables, all kind of stuff. We had mala. Over 4 days, we spent around 21 euros combined. I think it's quite good. We were craving some sushi, so one day we went to Genki Sushi. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing this correctly, but the food was great. Not the price, the food. So we had conveyor belt sushi and the price came down to around 45 euros for both of us. We had a Korean restaurant very close to our hotel. It's called Busan Pocha. And we went there twice. The food was amazing and prices were moderate. So I think they were quite close to what we pay here in Rotterdam. We spent 38 euros the first night and I think around 30 euros the second night. For a sweet tooth, Birds of Paradise is something that we saw in recommendations from travelers everywhere. So we had to try it. Oh yes, and someone that we met in Hanoi also recommended it to us. They were Singaporean locals, so we had to trust them. It's an ice cream place built around herbs, flowers and spices. It's a very nice concept and it's a very good marketing concept as well. And they also make their own ice cream cones, which have some thyme in them and they are freshly made on the spot. We paid 18 euros for 2 visits, both of us. We've also stopped on the way at Percent Arabica, which is one of our best coffee shop spots when we go to Asia. Maybe it's also the cute design and marketing that brings us back. Maybe we've been influenced a few times, that's for sure. One cappuccino in Singapore costs around 6 euros. Which we feel that it's a bit more expensive even than in Rotterdam. So after a long day walking in the warm climate, in the botanical gardens, we were super tired, we were very warm and we wanted to take a break. So it was a place that was really close to the botanical gardens. We were also very hungry, so we said, let's go here. We had a burger and some pasta and the bill was 42 euros. We were a bit shocked. We also did a supermarket run close to our hotel in Katong and we paid around 90 euros for some snacks to take home, souvenirs and gifts for our loved ones. If we put together how much we spent for food and drinks in Singapore, that comes down to a total of 360 euros between the two of us for the full 4 days. Also, I have to mention the cash spend, which was around 100 euros, and this adds up to that amount. So the total food spent for Singapore was around 460 euros. Let's cover transport. So in Singapore, our primary mode of transport was the metro and the bus. And for 4 days, we ended up paying around 17 euros for both of us. For Grab, we took that only twice, to go from the airport to the hotel and to go back to the airport when we checked out. And we paid around 12 euros for the arrival and 16 euros for the departure. The difference in price comes down to the time of day. So in total for transportation in Singapore, we paid 52 euros. What was cheaper than we expected? Of course, the public transportation. We paid 17 euros for both of us, which is very good price for the quality of transportation that they offer. What was pricier than expected? Of course, the hotel, 450 plus euros that we paid for 4 nights to stay, both of us outside of the city center. Before the total, the daily number. Excluding flights, Singapore costs us around 513 euros. This brings us to 128 euros per person per day. And this brings us to our Singapore total for 2 persons, 4 days and flights included, 1,117 euros in total. It might look a bit better than Vietnam and Malaysia, but bear in mind we stayed only 4 days here compared to the others. This is similar to the other destinations as well, so you can also make it maybe a bit cheaper, staying in a capsule hotel or eating at only hawker centers, but you can also make it even more expensive. So again, it depends on your interests and what you are looking for when visiting Singapore. So Singapore is of course the most expensive city from what we've seen in our trip in Southeast Asia, but knowing this beforehand and planning for it really helps having a very good vacation and relaxed one. So that's all 3. Let's put them side by side.
Alright, so let's show you the full picture for all 3 countries excluding flights. Yeah, so for Vietnam we've spent just over 1,800 euros. That is around 908 euros per person. And since we were in 2 locations, that brings us to a total of 82 euros per day per person. For Malaysia, 1,054 euros for the both of us, excluding flights, bringing us to 527 euros per person, or around 105 euros per person per day. And then there's Singapore, where we spent 1,027 euros for the both of us. That is 513 euros per person, or almost 130 euros per person per day. So now if we combine everything, including the flights as well, so that brings us to a total of 6,000 euros, give or take a few euros. I think it's funny that we got to 6,000, but in total we went there for 21 days, or let's call it 20 nights in total, which would bring us to around 150 euros per person per night, of course including the expensive flight to get there and to come back. So what do you think? Do you think we spent too much or just right for a very nice 3-week trip in Southeast Asia? So an honest reflection, if I call it like that, if we would do this trip again, perhaps we would spend our money differently. For sure, if you're looking at the bill for our Hoi An resort, not the resort itself, I would say that was the right call. We would go there again 100%, but combining the price we paid for the resort as well as for the food, that was around 650 euros-ish, something like that. It was a bit high, of course. We'd also have brought more cash for Vietnam and used it deliberately for street food and local vendors, as they typically only accept cash. And in Singapore, there wouldn't be much we would change. There would actually be a bunch of places we would like to go to, for example, Universal. I would say there that you can eat relatively cheaply if you eat at the local food courts or hawkers, basically. And if you take the metro and the bus, I do think that it was very cheap compared to at least here in Rotterdam, where it's actually pretty expensive to take the metro. And for anyone watching from Europe or maybe other parts that are far away from Southeast Asia, do account for the long haul flight, as this will definitely bring you close to 1,000 euros-ish per person. As we said before, we spent around 2,090 euros in total for flights, and that was before the Middle East crisis, so prices are definitely higher now, so keep that in mind. However, once you get there, it is actually pretty cheap to move around, especially if you go with AirAsia. So we'd love to know, does this match what you've spent here or what you were expecting? Whether you've been to one of those countries or you're still planning, drop your number below. We're really curious to see how our numbers compare with yours.
We have full videos on Hanoi, Halong Bay, Vietnam and Singapore already on the channel. Link is in the description if you really want to go deeper and explore with us. If you found this useful, please give us a like and a subscribe. This helps our channel grow even bigger and bring to you more experiences. Recently, we've been covering Asia from an European perspective, or should I say more like a Transylvanian perspective. And we have even more destinations coming up, so stay tuned if you want to join us. Thanks so much for watching, and I hope that this video really brought something valuable to you. Till next time!